Alrighty, folks. We are on chapters 14 and 15. Alright. Everybody ready? Revelation chapter 14. Then I looked, and behold, the Lamb was standing on Mount Zion, and with him 144,000, having his name and the name of his Father written on their foreheads. And I heard a voice from heaven like the sound of many waters, and like the sound of loud thunder. And the voice which I heard was like the sound of harpists playing on their harps. And they sang a new song before the throne and before the four living creatures and the elders, and no one could learn the song except the 144,000 who had been purchased from the earth. These are the ones who have not been defiled with women, for they have kept themselves chaste. They are the ones who follow the Lamb wherever he goes. These have been purchased from among the firstfruits to God and to the Lamb. And no lie was found in their mouth. They are blameless. And I saw another angel flying in mid-heaven, having an eternal gospel to preach to those who live on the earth, and to every nation and tribe and tongue and people. And he said with a loud voice, Fear God and give him glory, because the hour of his judgment has come. Worship him who made the heaven and the earth and sea and springs of waters. And another angel, a second one, following, saying, Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great, she who has made all the nations drink of the wine of the passion of her immorality. Then another angel, a third one, followed them, saying with a loud voice, If anyone worships the beast in his image, and receives a mark on his forehead or on his hand, he also will drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is mixed in full strength in the cup of his anger, and he will be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels, and in the presence of the Lamb. And the smoke of their torment goes up forever and ever. They have no rest day and night, those who worship the beast and his image, and whoever receives the mark of his name. Here is the perseverance of the saints who keep the commandments of God and their faith in Jesus. And I heard a voice from heaven saying, Write, Blessed are the dead who die in the Lord from now on. Yes, says the Spirit, so that they may rest from their labors, or for their deeds follow with them. Then I looked, and behold, a white cloud, and sitting on the cloud was one like the Son of Man, having a golden crown on his head and a sharp sickle in his hand. Another angel came out of the temple, crying with a loud voice to him who sat on the cloud, Put in your sickle and reap, for the hour to reap has come, because the harvest of the earth is ripe. Then he who sat on the cloud swung his sickle over the earth, and the earth was reaped. Another angel came out of the temple which is in heaven, and he also had a sharp sickle. Then another angel, the one who has power over fire, came out from the altar, and he called with a loud voice to him who had a sharp sickle, saying, Put in your sharp sickle and gather the clusters from the vine of the earth, because her grapes are ripe. So the angel swung his sickle to the earth and gathered the clusters from the vine of the earth and threw them into the great winepress of the wrath of God. And the winepress was trodden outside the city, and blood came out of the winepress up to the horses' bridles for a distance of 200 miles. Okay, here we start off. We're talking about the Lamb and the 144,000 and the Mount Zion. Now, typically, whenever we're talking about Mount Zion, everyone pretty much has the same general idea that it is the mountain that Israel is built on. Or not Israel itself, but Jerusalem, basically. It sits on top of a mountain, So you have Zion would be the city, and Mount Zion would be the mountain that it sits on. I looked, and behold, the Lamb was standing on Mount Zion. Well, where are we? At this point in time, we know that we're in the mid-tribulation point. Okay? So it says, I looked, and behold. It didn't say I saw a sign that looked like him. It says, look, and behold. He sees the Lamb, which we know is Christ, standing on Mount Zion. Well, the first, and this is where people get this mixed up, because they say, well, Mount Zion is the mountain that Jerusalem sits on. Well, technically yes, but we have to go back to what is everything here on the earth? It is a shadow of what's in heaven. All the real things are in heaven, and everything here is merely just an imitation. It's like it. And I'll show you why we can come to this conclusion. And with him 144,000. Now we covered the 144,000. They were sealed from at the beginning, during the sixth seal. They were sealed and protected. Okay, moving on. Having his name and the name of his Father written on their foreheads. And I heard a voice from heaven like the sound of many waters, like the sound of loud thunder. And the voice which I heard was like the sound of harpists playing harps. And they sang a new song. Okay, and they sang a new song before the throne and before the four living creatures and the elders. And no one could learn the song except the 144,000 who had been purchased from the earth. There's our first key right there, purchased from the earth. So it stands to reason that these people are no longer on the earth. Okay? We take that a little farther. It says, they sang a new song before the throne, before the four living creatures, before the elders. And no one could learn the song except the 144. But it says, they sang a new song. Well, this is not, it's a song that they were given, however God decides to do it. They sang it, which means they had to be in heaven, because that is where the song is being sung. Because it's before the 400, before the four living creatures, the elders, the throne of God. So we know those things take place in the throne room. And since the song is actually actively being sung, they have to be there. Plus, they are purchased from the earth. So that basically tells us when he's looking at the 144,000 and the Lamb on Mount Zion, they're talking about the actual Mount Zion, the true Mount Zion that resides in heaven still, and will until basically God brings heaven down to earth and remakes the earth. And that'll happen much later. So, people will take that little passage of Scripture and they kind of get that mixed up. Because they see Mount Zion, they think it's earth, and you get contradiction out of that. Which, if you actually had contradiction, or if the Bible, if you weren't able to distinguish that or discern that, yes, you get yourself in a thick mess real quick. That's one of those verses that theologists can just take and absolutely destroy something. All right, verse 4. These are the ones who have not been defiled with women, for they have kept themselves chaste. These are the ones who follow the Lamb wherever he goes. These have been purchased from among the men as first fruits to God and to the Lamb. And no lie was found in their mouth. They are blameless. It's kind of an interesting little fact here that we're learning about the 144,000. They will be chaste. So we have to go back, and we know that the 144,000 are 12,000 from each of the 12 tribes of Israel. Tribes of Judah, however you want to say it. Ultimately, it doesn't really matter. It's the Jews. So you have them. These will all be virgins. Probably, I would imagine they would be as close to perfect as you could possibly be. So these would probably not be older men. These would probably be younger Jews, more than likely. Now, it's a bunch of scenarios play out in my head as to how this could actually end up happening, but it's just kind of one of those things that's kind of iffy as far as how it's going to play out in end times. I really don't know. But whoever these 144,000 are, it kind of has to bring you to a new appreciation for how many Jews are actually out there. First off, you have your Messianic Jews. They'll leave with the church because they're part of the church. Okay? That'll leave all your Orthodox and your un-Christ-believing Jews behind. Yes, there's millions of them, but there's not billions of them. Okay? So you're going to have 144,000 that have never known a woman. I mean, you take all the Jews that are alive now who have known women, married or not, whichever doesn't really matter. That knocks out a big chunk. I mean, you're talking about a marginal percent. You're talking about your kids more often than not, you know. Most of your teenagers, at least in America, tend to lose their virginity somewhere around the ballpark of 15, 16 years old on average. So you got to have 144,000 of these that have to come to Christ during the tribulation and not have known a woman. And no lie is found in their mouth. And it's not that Christ washed it away, the blood covers it. That's not what it's saying. It's saying literally they're found blameless. How? It doesn't mean they haven't sinned, but it said they haven't lied, they haven't known a woman, so they kept themselves chaste. These are going to be, the 144 are going to be very specific group of people. And they are going to, because the Bible even tells us, it's better to be single. It's better that you do not have a significant other. God made Eve for Adam. We know this. But if God had had his way, because he made man in his image, God created us to be with him. So man, by himself, had no one to be with. Yes, he had God, and that should have been enough, but apparently it wasn't, because in his image, God created us so that we could be with him, so he knew man would need something, and since he doesn't have the ability to create, God created Eve for him. But these men, these 144, are going to deny themselves even that. And God says it's better to be alone. If you can be alone and serve me with your whole heart, do it. But if you can't, don't go out there and date and screw around and do everything else. Marry. Find a spouse, marry her. That's just the way it was. That's what the word says. If you can't be alone, marry. And that's basically what God wants from us. He wants us to be married and have somebody if we can't be to him and him by himself. Which is fine either way. I don't think he has a problem with it. I think if he had a problem with it, he wouldn't have made Eve to begin with. And it would have been, literally, we all would have been males. I'm really grateful he did not do that to us. Okay, the vision of the angel, verse 6. And I saw another angel flying in mid-heaven. Mid-heaven is the space between heaven and earth. Somewhere in the outer space region, roughly. Having an eternal gospel to preach to those who live on the earth. Now, I'm going to make sure everyone's on the same page here. The 144,000 are gone. They've been purchased from the earth. We're in the mid-trib area, time frame, region, roughly. Okay? Satan has indwelled the body of the Antichrist. We are in the Great Tribulation. We know during the Great Tribulation there will be martyrs. Earlier here, it calls the 144,000 the first fruits. Now, we as Christians should all know what the first fruits are. Whenever you get your check, your paycheck, off the top, you cut out your 10%, it goes to God. Not 10% out of the end of it if you pay all your bills. You take 10%, you remove it, set it aside, and that money is not for use. That should be the first thing you always do, is your first fruits. God blesses you, you yield fruit, the first portion of it that is his goes back to him. Not in the middle, not in the end. Okay? So some people will do a jubilee, or not a jubilee, I can't think of what it's called off the top of my head, but my parents do it every year. They give a seed offering, and which is a percentage of what they think they will make. And it's much more than 10% of a paycheck, But they'll save up, and they do a seed offering every year, And the first part, and then every January to January, at least the first half of the month of January, they also fast for 15 days. It's more than a tradition for them, It's a matter of they want God every year. They want to start the year blessing God, so God will bless them. And my parents have made it through with very little sometimes, and it's really cool to watch God bless them. Anyway, got off topic there. So, the 144 have been called the first fruits. They've purchased from the earth. So they're gone. Somewhere in the mid-tribulation time frame, the 144,000 are gone. They are protected theoretically, up to at least the halfway point, because they were sealed. But that seal is going to be gone, and they're going to be gone. Which is that whole portion where we've somewhat discussed or hypothesized as whether there's another seal or another protection over them, but it's not listed in the word anywhere. So, when the seal that protects the 144 is no longer in effect, it's not likely that anybody has any real protection whatsoever. If you make it to the end, you make it to the end. If you don't, you don't. It's kind of going to be a crapshoot. And the odds are going to be not so much in anybody's favor. Except for maybe the Jews, they might have the best shot because we know